Ada Bang Kun.
Hello, good morning, Dr. Serrano. Are you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We will begin shortly.
Mute mo. Mute mo.
Tes.
Suaranya ya.
Okay, let's begin this seminar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the online seminar conducted by Biology Education Study Program, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, with the topic of coping with pandemic disruptions through online learning and teaching. Besides Zoom, we also live on YouTube live streaming. Let me introduce myself. My name is Aditya Kurniawan. I am the appointed master ceremony and moderator for today's event. Before we start the seminar, we invite you to pray according to your belief. Let's pray. Amen. Before we start, let's have a welcoming word from Professor Davik as our Dean of Faculty of Teacher Training and Education. To Prof. Davik, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good morning for everyone in this distant international seminar today. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa syukurillah wala haula wala quwata illa billahil aliyil azim. Honorable Head of the Department of Biology Education, honorable all the event organizer member for online seminar today. Guest invited speaker who are joining with us, Joanna V. Serrano, PhD, Director of Information Office, Open University Philippines, as well as our local speaker, Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, who already presented with us. Today, I'm gratefully acknowledged for the all event organizer member to host the distant online seminar on special topic coping with pandemic disruption through online learning and teaching. As we know that the COVID-19 outbreak has been affected to more than 212 countries in the world. There are already also have more than 4 million people has taken this pandemic impact, and more than 300,000 people has been lost their life. So it motivating us to search and to obtain an optimal effort to double down the effort to defeat with the COVID-19. As we know, COVID-19 pandemic has also impacting not only in our life and situation, but also taking impact to business, economy, as well as education. Right now we are happy to stay at home. We're happy to work from home. But for the longer time, our academic atmosphere will be inconvenient if we still affected by the COVID-19 atmosphere. So I should keep saying that the solidarity between us, solidarity between a group of scientists, solidarity between a group of medical team, solidarity between all of us as a human being to take effort to combat and to defeat with this disease, as well as we should move on, not only having said with this kind of situation, we should improve our effort, especially in education. This seminar today is a part of finding a solution how to find an effective strategy or technique in pandemic disruption through online learning and teaching. So therefore, we appreciate a lot to all of you, to event organizer, especially to Joanna V. Serrano from Philippines, who already joined with the seminar to share an idea to have a solution of a pandemic affection. So thank you again for all participants who are joining this session today, and hopefully this seminar give a lot benefit, and hopefully also COVID-19 not only taken so much life from us, but we learn from this COVID, we learn so much as a humanity. We gather together to overcome this situation and to improve our strategy for the better life in the future. Thank you very much again, and that's all from me, and hopefully enjoy your seminar, and hopefully this seminar give you a lot benefit for better life. By reciting Basmala, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I declare to open this seminar for all of you formally. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Before we start the seminar, we take the photograph. Okay, thank you very much. Now it's time to our agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that this pandemic has influenced many aspects of our life, including in education. As the social and physical distancing are more and more encouraged, many academicians and educators have to swift their way in conducting learning from classical classroom to online distance learning. We will go more in depth on this topic with our speakers today. We have Joanne V. Serrano, PhD from University of the Philippines Open University, and Prof. Dr. Suratno from University of Jember. First of all, may I briefly introduce to you our speaker from UPOU, Joanne V. Serrano, PhD. She is an associate professor of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies. She is the current director of UPOU Information Office. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Development Communication from UPLB Los Baños. She also earned her Master of Management, major in Development Management, and Doctor of Philosophy, major in Development Communication from the same university. Over the last 2 decades, she has authored a number of international and national scientific publications, presented in various conferences, and served as resource speaker in training and seminar in various areas such as open and distance e-learning, environmental advocacy, development communication, educational technology, and other related fields. Before we start the presentations, let's know the regulations of how the presentation will be going on. Each speaker will have 30 minutes to deliver their presentations, then will be continued by Q&A sessions. Please mute your audio so we can hear the presentation clearly. Firstly, I'd like to give the chance to Dr. Serrano. Please, ma'am, time is yours.
Thank you very much, and I would like to say hello to my friends there in Jember University. So I'm sharing this screen so everyone can see my presentation. Sorry, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
All right, okay. So good day, everyone. I hope everyone is okay in your respective locations. For many of you who have been in lockdown mode and have been staying at home for about 2 months now, you probably have had your share of webinars. In my social media accounts and my email, there have been many push notifications on all kinds of webinars, video lectures, or podcasts on online learning. So I hope you will bear with me today as I share my thoughts on how to cope with this disruption in education brought about by this pandemic through online teaching and learning using UPOU's framework of open and distance e-learning, or ODEL. We all know that due to the threat of COVID-19, academic institutions are facing decisions about how to continue teaching and learning while keeping their faculty, staff, researchers, and students safe from this global public health crisis. Many institutions have opted to cancel all face-to-face classes, including labs and other learning experiences, and some have even mandated their faculty members to shift their courses online to help prevent the spread of the virus. More and more institutions, both basic and higher education, are making this crucial decision each day. Online teaching and learning is not something new. It has been around for almost 2 decades now, although it has actually gained popularity almost a decade ago when massive open online courses were used by Ivy League traditional universities. So probably some of you have enrolled in Coursera, edX, and now we are forced by circumstances brought about by the COVID pandemic. We face a surreal and unprecedented situation wherein we have been brought to rethink how we teach as teachers and learn as students. We suddenly face a different kind of reality wherein the only way for everyone to get through in terms of education and learning is through online learning. And no one of us, despite many forecasts and predictions, would have thought that when we started out this year, that we will suddenly be in this kind of environment. This pandemic is a disruption that has indeed caught everyone off guard. Despite advice from education experts of the advantages of using online platforms as a supplement to face-to-face learning, many educators and policymakers have not really taken this advice seriously. Despite forecasts and predictions that major disasters, including a global pandemic, can happen anytime, many people have not really paid serious attention to it. Now, as a result, many learners and teachers are not prepared on how to deal with this disruption that affects all aspects of our lives, including education. Suddenly, teachers and students are pressured to transition to online teaching and learning. This is, of course, on top of the anxieties brought about by this unnatural way of living due to lockdowns and unrestricted movements. So we constantly worry about families, our friends, financial concerns, and this is aggravated by feelings of isolation and uncertainty of the future. But even before this pandemic struck us, personally, I have been emphasizing in my previous lectures and talks that we need to change and shift our mindset on how we view education. I've always said that there are two major kinds of change. The first kind of change is imposed by circumstances, and the second kind of change is one that is planned and adapted to encourage growth or improvement. Understanding why there has to be changes such as pedagogy and technology and learning helps us plan for changes instead of reacting to it as brought about by the changes in the environment. And so now, we are in the stage wherein change has been imposed by circumstances. This pandemic has disrupted our lives beyond our imagination. So today, let me focus on 3 important concepts that all of us need to understand in order to be able to strategize and plan our teaching and learning activities in the coming months. So we'll discuss about emergency remote teaching and learning, open and distance e-learning, and how do we transition to online teaching and learning and other alternative solutions. Before I proceed, let me just pay homage to Dr. Seuss in this disruption in learning. There are many considerations that we have in mind. So if Dr. Seuss was still alive, he would have this poem. I'm sure you have seen this in social media. I will teach you in a room. I will teach you now in Zoom. I will teach you in your house. I will teach you with a mouse. I will teach you here and there. I will teach you because I care. So just do your best and do not worry about the rest. And one of our professors in UPOU added these few lines. If we teach because we care, we should think not only where, but also how to learn and share. So this point becomes very relevant now that we navigate a new kind of learning and teaching that doesn't happen only inside a physical classroom. As we have read in social media and watched news all over the world, the decisions of many institutions to shift to online learning have created an uproar among teachers, parents, and students. The speed with which this move to online instruction is expected to happen is unprecedented and staggering, and many are not prepared. We are talking here of not just the infrastructure, but as well as the skills and capacity of teachers to teach online and students to learn online. For many, there is no available support to faculty members on how to implement online learning or teaching in such a narrow preparation window. One author I've read in an online article wrote that faculty might feel like instructional MacGyvers, having to improvise quick solutions in less than ideal circumstances. No matter how clever a solution might be, and some are indeed very clever solutions have been emerging, many instructors will understandably find this process quite stressful. Before our current situation, online learning somehow carries with it a stigma of being lower quality than face-to-face learning. This is despite research showing otherwise. Here at UPOU, we have been doing research, and open universities across the globe have been doing research, and data show that online learning is at par or even better than traditional learning. Still, there is still that negative perception among educators. And now, these hurried moves to suddenly transition to online mode by many institutions could indeed make this perception a reality, considering that online teaching requires careful planning and design in terms of pedagogy and technology, taking full advantage of its affordances. As Tony Bates said, an expert in distance education, it is not a good idea just to jump into it and hope to wing it. Teaching online is not rocket science, but it does need a different approach from classroom teaching. So, in this time of global public health crisis, if an institution suddenly decides to shift to an online mode of delivery, experts in e-learning and education instructional design, including the World Bank and UNESCO, have proposed to use the term emergency remote teaching and learning. Emergency remote teaching and learning is a temporary shift of instructional delivery to an alternate delivery mode due to crisis circumstances. It involves the use of fully remote teaching solution for instruction or education that would otherwise be delivered face-to-face or as blended or hybrid courses, and that will return to that format once the crisis or emergency has abated. The primary objective in these circumstances is not to recreate a robust educational ecosystem, but rather to provide temporary access to instruction and instructional support in a manner that is quick to set up and is reliably available during an emergency or crisis such as what we are experiencing right now. It is basically a crisis response to something that no one really planned for in advance. So when we understand emergency remote teaching and learning in this manner, we can start to differentiate it from distance learning, e-learning, or online learning. So what are the characteristics of an emergency remote teaching and learning? First is that there should be an emergency or a crisis, meaning the situation is not normal and is not expected to get better in the coming days. The emergency closures of schools in many countries may not only cause loss of learning in the short term, but also loss of further human capital and diminish economic opportunities in the long term. So to help mitigate the loss of learning, many countries are pursuing options to utilize remote learning to manage and cope with the crisis. Second is that the courses are normally designed for a face-to-face instruction. This means that the activities, resources, including assessment, have previously been designed for a normal brick-and-mortar setup. Thus, shifting to a different mode would require time and resources on both the school and the teachers, as well as the students. And third, due to the emergency situation, there is a very narrow window of opportunity to redesign the course to fit a different mode of delivery. In an emergency remote teaching and learning, it is important to ensure that every learner has access to quality education despite the circumstances. This means addressing issues of inequity, providing multimodal responses, capitalizing on existing infrastructures, and combining various learning mediums to engage students. So I curated some of these guidelines for an emergency remote teaching and learning. So first, you have to analyze the current situation. What are the existing infrastructures, physical, software, hardware, internet connectivity? What are the existing content in terms of the subject that you are teaching? What are the capacity of your teachers as well as your learners? Do they have access to the internet? How do you provide support, and what are the processes in place? And then the second guideline is that you build on what you already have. Remember, this is an emergency situation, so you cannot suddenly purchase equipment or build buildings in a matter of a week or so. So you build on what you already have. And we have to remember that when we talk of emergency remote teaching, it is not always online and synchronous. You can find other ways to do it, even if students and teachers do not have internet connectivity. And then, of course, you have to revisit your course goals. You don't just start in the middle of something just because you are on a crisis or emergency mode. And then you have to keep it simple. The key here is to maintain simplicity, because remember, this is an extraordinary situation. And then you have to have established a system for communication. How do you communicate with your students? Do you text them? Do you email them? Some may not have internet connection, so how do you communicate to them? And then, of course, you have to provide support. This is in terms of educational support. How will your students access the resources for your classes? And then you have to review. How will you assess your learning? Probably the traditional way of doing it will not work anymore. And of course, you have to amend existing school policies. So to sum it up, ERT, emergency remote teaching, is a crisis response to something that no one really planned for in advance. So now let us try to understand how emergency remote teaching is different from open and distance e-learning, or ODEL. So ODEL is actually a worldview that combines the philosophy of open learning, the pedagogies of distance education, and the technologies of e-learning. One colleague from the e-learning industry or sector once asked me, isn't distance education the same as e-learning? So how come UPOU separates these two concepts? So let me discuss further this worldview that UPOU espouses. So as I've said, ODEL is a worldview that surfaces the convergence and integration of the concepts of open learning, which is grounded in the philosophy of openness and inclusion, the distance education pedagogy and its concept of learner-centeredness and flexibility, and e-learning with its connectivity and constructivist framework. So the convergence and interweaving of these three domains, infused with the values that underpin the universitas, which includes excellence, academic freedom, humanism, intellectual pluralism, democracy, and service to society, will pave the way for social transformation. So this is part of the UPOU's thrust as a premier institution, as part of the national university here in our country, and we hope to produce graduates who are not just academically excellent, but also committed to nation building and who are leaders and responsible citizens of the country. So let us talk about open learning. So when we talk of open learning, it is a vision of an educational system in which education is accessible to every individual with minimal restrictions. So it emphasizes the flexibility of a system to eradicate problems caused by barriers like age, geographical location, time constraints, and economic situation. And then, of course, we have distance education. So when we talk of distance education, its main characteristic is that students or the learners are physically separated from their teachers in time and space. So, for example, what we're doing right now is a form of distance learning, although this is not really planned, but it makes use of a technology for distance learning. So despite the time and geographical difference, communication still exists between the teacher and students. So they communicate through different technologies, mostly internet-based. So please take note that in distance education, teaching and learning can be both synchronous, meaning it's happening real time, like what we're doing right now, or it can be asynchronous, meaning students can access materials depending on their current situation and their current time zone.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I think I had some internet connectivity problem.
Okay, no problem.
So let me share again my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay, there. Can you hear? Sorry, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see your
Okay.
slide.
All right. So this is an example of how UPOU utilized technology in the past to communicate with students. So we have been doing this, but this scenario is now very common nowadays, and this has actually been the norm for everyone because of the COVID-19. So in distance education, lessons are primarily imparted through media like print, audiovisual materials, and of course, a computer. And then there's e-learning. So e-learning is any technologically supported learning using teaching and learning tools that utilize electronic media. And one component of e-learning is online learning. So when we talk of online learning, of course, it takes place online. Therefore, it requires connection to the internet. And it has been studied for decades. There are already existing research studies, theories, models, standards, and evaluation criteria that focus on quality online learning, online teaching, online course design, and online student support and online assessment. And then there's blended learning. Probably many of you have been doing this. It's a mixture of e-learning and traditional teaching. So it's a strategic and systematic approach to combine types and modes of learning, integrating the best aspects of face-to-face and online interaction using appropriate ICTs. So experts in distance education and online learning are predicting that there will be a considerable increase in online and blended learning after COVID-19. So we are seeing that happening right now. Those universities that are doing emergency remote teaching will eventually integrate online learning in their instructional delivery. So it will not just be for emergency purposes, but they would really be planning how to integrate online learning and how they deliver their courses. So okay, let me just, maybe it's too big. Okay. Now, let us discuss how
Ah,
emergencies.
saya keluar.
Can you? Yeah, sorry. Can you see the screen? Okay. So, um, now let us discuss how what I discussed earlier on emergency remote teaching is different from ODEL and the different categories under it, like online learning and blended learning. So in ODEL, learning experiences are planned. So if you look at these components, there is course design and development, teaching and learning, which is the course delivery, and then we have the student support and the organization and management. So if, as you can see in ODEL, learning experiences are planned and advised using established learning theories, teaching strategies, and appropriate technology. So everything is planned.
Please mute your audio.
Sorry, I think I lost my connection again. So let me share
Okay.
again my slides.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so as I mentioned, these are the four components. So let me just give an example of how thorough you design a specific course. So for example, typical planning, preparation, and development in online learning for a fully online course would take you 6 to 12 months before the course is delivered. So, and then the faculty members are usually more comfortable teaching online by the second or third offering of their online courses. So it will be impossible for every faculty member to suddenly become an expert in online teaching and learning in this current situation, in which lead times range from a single day to a few weeks. Well, there are resources to which faculty can turn for assistance. The scale of change currently being required on many campuses will stress the system that provide those resources and most likely will surpass their capacities. So we have to face this reality. Many of the online learning experiences that instructors will be able to offer their students will really not be fully featured or necessarily well planned. So this is what's happening to us right now and what will happen in the next few months. And there's a high probability for probably suboptimal implementation. So we need to recognize that everyone will be doing the best they can, trying to take just the essentials with them as they make, we make a mad dash during this emergency. So that's the distinction is important between the normal, everyday, effective online instruction and that what many of us are doing in a hurry with the bare minimum resources and scan time, which is called emergency remote teaching. Okay, so these are the four components that should be carefully considered when you will eventually integrate online learning into your instructional delivery. So let me highlight course design and development, instructional delivery, which includes the actual teaching or facilitation of the course. And then, of course, you have to provide student support and, of course, the organization and management aspect of it. And then just to share with you that there are categories of online course. So there's just the web presence, using the web to disseminate vital information of the course, such as course description, requirements, references. And then there's one which we call web enhanced, which uses the web to support processes that occur in face-to-face classroom interaction, such as blended learning. There's the fully online, which we call the web-based. So it uses the web as a communication hub in addition to using it to provide access to digital resources, meaning you should have a fully functional learning management system for this. So in the screen, these are some of the advantages of online learning. Maybe I don't need to discuss all of this. I think, we need online learning right now, so we don't need to be convinced anymore. But just to show you, this figure summarizes its advantages. So the learner is in the center of learning, and these are the affordances of online learning. There's collaborative learning with other students, easy to track progress, accessibility, lower environmental impact, cost effectiveness, wider reach. For adult learners, they don't need to leave their work, so it actually improves work productivity, including minimal disruption at work. Allows flexibility, learner-centeredness, up-to-date content. It is actually customizable. It is multimediality and easy distribution. Okay, so in the screen you will see some of the drawbacks of online learning, but I will not discuss that anymore. I'm sure that as you go through the actual online learning, you would experience some of these drawbacks. So let me just go on these design principles. So when you will be designing now your courses, these are the 4 principles that you have to bear in mind. So the first principle is that you have to design for learning outcomes. It is important that when designing online learning, you design with the specific knowledge or skills that the learners need to acquire and how they will be able to apply the knowledge and skills both in the context of the class and in real life. And the second principle is that you design for learners. This means that you address issues of access and inclusion and taking into account the diversity of learners in terms of their experiences, approaches, and support requirements. And the third principle is that you design with digital resources and technologies. So you don't need to recreate something. You have to acknowledge that there are vast resources in the web which you can make use of. So in choosing tools and resources, it is important to consider their affordances. So what are the tools and resources relative to the desired learning outcomes? So these things, outcomes, learners, digital resources, and technologies should always be aligned. And then there's the fourth principle, which is the designing for interaction with others. This is very critical because one of the drawbacks in online learning is the feeling of isolation of the learners. So when we talk of interaction, John Dewey refers to this interaction as this is the defining component of the educational process that occurs when students transform the inert information passed to them from another and construct it into knowledge with personal application and value. So again, this is very critical in online learning. So you have to design activities for learning, which is designed wherein they can interact with others. So in this figure, we'll see the common interaction in distance education and online learner. So let me discuss that in deeper. So there's the learner-learner interaction. So if you can see in the figure, the learner-learner, meaning these are both learner interaction. So this is the type of learning interaction which supports collaboration among peers. So this type is both cognitive and social in nature and refers to communication between and among peers with or without the teacher present. So in online learning, the learners can interact with each other even without the teacher present. So this is very critical in online learning. So it can be one-to-many, meaning just classmate with another classmate, or one-to-many, which is class-based. Because this allows learners to discover different ways of thinking about and solving problems and allow multiple perspectives and increases the completion rate and acquisition of critical social skills in education. So what are the examples of this? You have, for example, peer share, peer critique, case analysis, discussion forum, collaborative writing or presentation, or even debate. So these are online activities that you can do. And then there's also the learner-teacher interaction, wherein all communications between the teacher and the learner that occurs throughout the course. So this can be asynchronous and synchronous. When we talk of synchronous, this is real-time happening. So this can be in text or audio and video format. The facility of such communication leads many new teachers to be overwhelmed by the quantity of student communication and by the rise in students' expectations for immediate responses. So this is something that you'll probably encounter. And then there's the learner-content interaction. So the content, these are the learning resources that you carefully curate, wherein you put into your course. So the learner interacts with the content by undertaking a learning task independently or by himself. Examples of this type of learning activity are, answering self-assessment questions, reflecting on an assigned reading, and taking a quiz where feedback is automated, as in online quizzes. And these activities allow students to ascertain their understanding of the content and immediately apply it to their immediate context. And there's, of course, the teacher-content interaction. So this focuses on the creation of content and learning activities by teachers. So it allows teachers to continuously monitor and update the content resources and activities that they create for student learning. And there's the content-content interaction. The content is programmed to interact with other automated information sources so as to refresh itself constantly and to acquire new capabilities. For example, a weather tutorial may take its data from current meteorological servers, creating a learning context that is up-to-date and relevant to the learner's context. So given all those interaction, let me just run through the roles of teachers in online learning. So in learning, in teaching, as teachers in online learning, you have to design and organize the learning, meaning you create and maintain the course content. You select the learning resources, you build curriculum materials, and then you repurpose or customize and contextualize the learning materials. And then you are the one who should design the learning activities. In order for those other interactions to happen, you have to design appropriate learning activities. So to maintain a balance between independent study and community building through interaction, dialogue, and collaboration. And so you select combination of media and formats to facilitate deep exploration of course content, provide variety, and meet requirements for access and cost effectiveness. And then, of course, you have to coordinate learning activities, including negotiating timelines for group activities and student project work. And then another is that you are the one who facilitates the discussion. So you have to develop a sense of trust and safety within the community. So you have to provide the structure for participation. You pose discussion questions that foster critical thinking. And you respond to student contributions to discussion forums. And you foster critical engagement with the course content by challenging your students to formulate their own questions and comments about the course content. And then third is to assess learning. So you have to provide formative and summative assessment. You have to also articulate clearly what are the criteria for grading and cultivate a presence of flexibility, concern, and empathy in the style and format of assessment. And the last one is that you provide direction. Remember, when we talk of distance learning and online learning, the teacher and learner are physically separated. So you have to provide intellectual and scholarly leadership. You have to set and communicate the intellectual climate. You have to share subject matter knowledge with your students and answer technical questions, including questions about access to internet resources, how do you manipulate the platform, etc. So let me just run through these. What are the important points for consideration that you have to consider right now? So it is important that you realize that educators, you must ensure the continuity of learning. And number two, these are extraordinary times. So we must nurture social and emotional well-being of the students and not just be concerned with competencies. And then we must support our institution's decision on the type of remote and distance learning strategies that will be used. And we have to be ready technologically, pedagogically, the content, infrastructure, the learning support, and the policies. And then in terms of capacity building, we have to train our teachers, the students, and even parents. And then we have to think of equity and inclusion. What about the disadvantaged groups? Another important point for consideration is how do we access quality open educational resources, and what are the policies in place nationally, institutionally. And then we have to think of privacy and data security, and as well as our sustainability and long-term goals. So aside from online learning, I've listed down here some of alternative learning solutions for areas which do not have access to the internet. So you can probably plan for a print-based learning material, school on the air, wherein you will tap community radios, so you can do broadcasts of your lectures over the radio. You have TV broadcasts, so in the areas there are community cables, you can probably partner with them. Or you can upload content in USB, provide OTG, so even in mobile phones, they can access the content. Mobile learning can be through basic text or cloud-based, or you can explore systems with strong offline functionality. So here are some reflection questions before we end before I end my presentation. So you have to ask yourself, what are your goals in the next few months? Will this just be an emergency remote teaching and learning? Or will you eventually integrate this into a more planned online learning type of instruction? What are the resources available to me, externally and internally? What are the needs of my stakeholders? And what will work best in my context? So that ends my presentation. I think I overstepped on my time limit, but I welcome questions now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Serrano,
Thank you.
for the informative and interesting presentation. I believe that our audience start to develop a concept and ready to ask you a question, but they will have to wait. Now I will turn to Professor Suratno with the topic of effective and efficiency of online learning. Professor Suratno is the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs in the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education. Graduate from Jember University for bachelor's degree, Gajah Mada University for master, and Malang State University for a doctoral degree. He concerned in lesson study, metacognitive, and other pedagogical fields. For Professor Suratno, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Adit. We will to start my experience, my experience to manage how to effectively online learning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all of the participants. And happy Fasti and happy Mubarak Eid as soon as possible. Okay, in our presentation, we will to spirit on the 3 steps. The first one, how to advantage and disadvantage online learning. In the second stage, we say about how about to manage effectively online learning. On the last stage, I want to say to our experience in our what about the management or implementation in our university, Jember University. Okay, this is my presentation about online learning. Online learning. As you know that now Indonesia or on the world have problem about pandemic, corona pandemic, 19 pandemic corona. So, and it is have an impact on education, on the learning process. Next material. And our government have new regulation about pandemic, how to manage a learning process, how to manage education. So should be a learning process move from face to face to online learning. But sometimes the teacher, the lecturer, it is a new model how to imply online learning. But actually online learning should be how to accelerate between effective and efficient on online learning. So, and the pandemic make social distancing or physical distancing. The COVID-19 pandemic for social distancing policy Indonesia, it was more recognized as a physical distancing. I think the same social distancing or physical distancing is a regulation in our government and the other world. And Kemdikbud Indonesia respond as our government. How about policy in a pandemic? So, and our government work from home, study from home. It is a new regulation in the pandemic now. So, hopefully, work from home or study from home make effective and efficient online learning. For example, learning process, examination, or maybe activity on psychomotoric, for example, observation or the other. Next. Okay. There is a lot of material to support it online learning. The first one, technological, and the second one, teacher or lecturer competency, how to use of learning application, and the third, a problem limited resources for the utilization of education technology, for example, internet or the other. Sometimes problem about internet, that is make learning process have a problem. And last, teacher or lecturer and student sometimes have a problem how to help the student learning from home. So there is sometimes difference between how manage face-to-face in the classroom and online learning from home. Okay. Uh, According our opinion, that this online learning is not a method to change face-to-face learning with digitally application. Rather, it's burden student with assignment that are piled up every day. Online learning should encourage students to creative. Produce knowledge and becoming student lifelong learner. It is sometimes a problem in online learning process. There are several steps that can be common reflection improving our education system, especially related to online learning. The first one, all teacher lecturer must be able to teach distance learning. And online learning not only moves the process face-to-face using a digitally application. The other side, online learning pattern must be part of a learning, even if only as a complement. And the last, how to improve the education system in COVID-19. Teacher must have online learning equipment. For example, laptop or handphone, video conference supporting tool. That is all material should be supported on improving the education system on COVID-19. Next. Okay. In the middle, the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, our education system must be ready to lead the transfer online learning for all students and by all teachers. We are enter a new era to pet creativity. This is the other side of problem online learning in the COVID-19. So, a student have more skill. The teacher improves skill about how to manage online learning. The changing system, perspective, and pattern interaction with technology. And this principle, sometimes we have not in the face-to-face the classroom. That is the other side. Online learning in the pandemic, Corona-19 virus. Okay. How the aim online learning, the teaching, and the COVID. Actually, a student get personalized learning experience that are meaningful, challenge, and accordance with the ability and needs of student. So, in this case, hope the student have more experience self. It's more experience self from discuss with the other student, discuss with the teacher, discuss with the lecture, or more improve how to know about resources learning. And this is key how to online learning and teaching success. Next. That is step by step about the concept online learning. The first one, do an explanation in advance to parent, but study from home. The parent have more contribution. How to sharing the parent and the student at home. So contribution the parent is more bigger than if the student face to face online in the classroom. And the second, on one learning activity can include more from one lesson. So as we know that in the new era, the student have more activity in one time. Multitasking, we call this one. Now, we look that the person, human, sometimes in one time can work more than one activity. And then the next, give assignment related to the issue being discussed hotly. In the learning perspective, assignment should be make on content, make on the through assignment. Assignment should be make on higher or taking skill, for example. Why? Because the student assignment self at home. Okay. And then step, provide open-ended a question, for example. And this beside the assignment, provide open-ended question. But sometimes it's a problem about the assignment, because the teacher, the lecturer have not enough how to control the student work to assignment. So in this case, stop, avoid giving tasks just a practice question. Avoid giving assignment that requires student to only transfer material from the textbook to the assignment sheet. So that is should be stopped. So improve assignment on open-ended, for example, like this, or higher thinking skill at the side. Okay, next. Do it, make detailed but not task guided, and then be sure to give feedback. Make sure there are success criteria, and be sure to do period reflection. And that is directed learning and sustainability, how to give assignment without control, maximal or optimum from teacher or from lecture. Next. Weakness of online learning. Some of the negative effects of online learning are the lack of understanding of education about the concept of online learning, the application of online learning that is less than optimal, and the limited facility for online learning such as practicum activities or activities on the psychomotoric. That are not properly implemented, so that they inhibit the development of psychomotoric aspect. But sometimes teacher, lecturer can improve how to manage psychomotoric learning process. This can certainly disrupt the result of online learning and must be addressed immediately. So that is a weakness of the online learning. Next. But the other side is advantage of online learning. The first one, online learning make added creativity to the learning model. The second, not technological literate. On the other, increasing children talent. This is the other side advantage of the online learning. The online learning add insight about literacy online. Sometimes the student on learning process can look the other source from the other part about how to support it to make improve knowledge. Next. How tips or strategy make online learning effective and efficient? Online learning is more effective if there have a module. If we have not a module, online learning not effective. And then video supporting tool to improve online learning process. And then higher ordering skill question on the learning management process or assessment. That is important how to develop the learning process, focus on higher order thinking skill process, and in the assignment how to improve, how to development, make or develop assignment or higher order thinking skill, and actually the other learning resources to be improved that are structural in the learning media system. So, how to manage learning media system, that's more important. The online learning not only just with video, but it's more important manage learning media system is important. But in this case, learning media system should support it about the theory of learning. For example, like this, theory of strategy of education, how to student active, for example. This key on the learning media system. Next. Okay. Tips for optimal online learning. For example, do learning using the e-learning method. Okay. Do learning together, all at the same time, using group. That's okay. And then use, for example, WhatsApp, Telegram, Zoom application, or the other social media as learning tool. This is just learning tool. Okay, this is a learning tool. But how to use learning tool to support it effectively to online learning? That is important. And second, provide structure and measure tasks. This is intended to able to provide a meaningful learning experience for students. That is focusing on assignment. So should be refer from curriculum achievement. Refer from class improvement or graduation. So that is a focus of online learning. Should be refer on the curriculum. Should be refer what about the class improvement, achievement. That is focus of online learning. And then how to manage optimal online learning. Provide good teaching material. Resources is important. How to manage resources on the online learning should be on module. Good teaching material are certainly able to make students understand and how to step by step improve knowledge with resources. For example, if the module of learning resources have a picture, audio, for example, how to step by step student to improve knowledge, how the student learning, how a student make something work on the, for example, video or the other source of learning process. And the last maybe tips of optimal online learning, monitor and evaluate student learning outcome. Sometimes in this a problem about monitoring online learning process. So in this case, not only giving a quantitative assessment, but also need to give a quantitative refer related to the student work. But in this case, the teacher on the lecture have not enough to control the student work, finish the assignment. Next, Farid. Okay. I think that this is more important in the theory of education, of theory of the learning. Assignment should be improved from assignment for learning to assignment as learning or assignment for learning. Usually in the teacher on the lecture, the assignment just focus on assessment for learning. But actually in this case, on the online learning, assignment should be improved from assessment for learning to assessment as learning or assessment for learning. Assessment for learning just on the step on about the comprehension step. But how about to manage the assessment as learning? The student will be assigned self or give a sign or evaluation to the friend in this work together. Okay, so that is how to manage assignment effectively, improve from assignment for learning to assessment as learning or assessment for learning. Okay, next. Okay, so far my experience, the most dominant assessment of the learning is conducted by education compared to assessment for learning and assessment as learning. Assessment of learning outcome should priority assessment as learning and assessment for learning over assessment of learning, because it is contextual higher order thinking skill. Next. Okay, next. That is the part one about how to manage advantage and disadvantage effective on online learning. And that is the second part. I have example part by part, step by step online learning optimum. Next. Mas Yuti, yang tadi yang saya kirim masih ada di bawahnya lagi, ada tambahan lagi yang di WA. Okay. I have example how manage learning media system LMS effectively and efficient. Okay. Bisa dia slideshow? Oh gitu. Okay, that is for example how to manage learning media system LMS step by step. That is from my government example on learning process. The first one, for example, that is how to manage about step by step online learning. For example, this is a material about unit 1. For example, this is prepare learning process on the student at the university. The first one we have information about how to start meeting on the learning. The first one should be meet online. What about the strategy meet online learning? The teacher, the lecturer can using tool online web. For example, use Zoom, WA, Google Meet, web meeting, and the other. Or big blue button, for example. That's a step, the first one step. The teacher, the lecture will be start from the online. Use tool online learning. The teacher and the lecturer can use this online what the tools is simple, for example, simple, friendly, or this is efficient. Okay, that is just one. And the second, next. So the first meeting will be start from online. Nah, and this meeting should be the teacher or lecturer need a web meeting. How to manage web meeting effectively? So the teacher or lecturer should be know that the student, for example, noise, and the picture, for example, how to manage this one. So in this web meeting, what about the noise to manage hopefully fully good? So noise is noise hope not make a problem. So what the minutes on the web meeting should be student understand. Okay, and then second step in the introduction, student and teacher or student and lecturer should be know how to aim of the introduction and the web meeting. Usually the web meeting, the teacher or the lecturer give a task, give a problem, one by one, share the student, share with the other how to solve the problem, how to answer the question in introduction with web meeting. And the first one, web meeting, make student prepare to joining this class. So, according our opinion, the first one class will be start should be on the web meeting, so the student prepare joining on this class. Next. I repeat again. On the web meeting, the teacher, the lecturer gave a problem, gave a question, how to solve the student question or this problem by sharing from student to the other. And after that, web meeting maybe can close, and the student solve the problem self, or the student work by discuss the other, or the student can, for example, chat, discuss, student to student, or student to the teacher or lecturer. But in this step, the student work self without web meeting. So that is important, how to manage learning management system. And this part should be resources completed. Should be have more resources, so the student can work step by step in the learning media system. For example, what about the student can finish the job, but actually in this learning media system should be step by step, the job finish should be clear. That is important, how to manage learning management system in the second part. Next. Okay. On the last part of the learning management system, in the end of the lesson, the teacher or lecturer meet again on the web meeting. For example, use the other tool, Zoom or classroom, cloud classroom, web meeting, or the other. How to manage on the web meeting in the last lesson? In the last lesson, the first one is reflection. What about the material of reflection? The material is related with and the first web meeting. The teacher or lecturer can discuss what about the question. It is finished or have a problem to discuss. That is in the web meeting in the last lesson. Reflection. And don't forget, the teacher should be submit work or examination, for example, or the other on the learning management system. This should be clear. So I repeat again. The first one, we meet on the web meeting, and the second one, web meeting is closed, and then the student study or work self. In this case, using the all of resources or discuss with the other student or discuss with the teacher. So in the second part, the teacher or lecturer should be active joining this learning management system. For example, give a comment, give discuss, give edit information, for example. This is in the second part where the student work on the learning management process.
Excuse me, Prof. Ratno, you have 5 minutes left.
Okay, okay. The next session, that is reflection. We meet on the web meeting again. So let us step by step how to manage effectively online learning. Okay, next. Okay, that is the example. The how to manage learning management system. And the next. 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 Okay. Let us just describe how about in our university. Actually, in our university have a completed learning management system. But sometimes I and our friend not effectively manage tool on the learning management system in our university. The first one, the lecture login and choose the subject matter. Okay, next. Adit. Okay, let us choose subject matter. For example, in our subject matter. Next, after choose subject matter. Next, Pak Adit. Okay, let us picture the subject matter. For example, animal taxonomy. That is my activity. But in this case, sometimes I or my friend not effectively joining this class, and that's a problem. Next. And that is tool learning management system in our university. That is complete. That is have a tool about big blue button. That is attendance, have assignment and the other tool. But sometimes the lecture just start from lesson on the big blue button until finish. But what about the student activity? Sometimes it has not. And that's a problem. Why? In this case, can be solved. So actually should be has managed how to learning management system could manage. Next. Okay. The other side, in our university have the link, for example, URL. The teacher or the lecturer can related URL, so the student can click URL and the student joining this lesson. But the problem, it is not joining the class, but how to manage in the learning manager system. It is important. But if we a long time have this tool, that is effective maybe. but the other side, and it is not efficient in the pandemic COVID now. And that's a problem sometimes. But in the pandemic, and our government have lockdown, and the economic maybe problem. So if we use a long time with that tool, it is sometimes the problem in this case. Next. Okay. And this is how to manage in the my subject course like this. So according me, should be improved. I repeat again, if the lesson opened by web meeting until start from the finish, maybe that is effective, but maybe not efficient. Okay, I think enough. That is three part of my presentation. Thank you very much for attention. If have a question, we can discuss about this material. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof, for the information and presentation. We already have 9 questions, but I will read the first 3 questions. The first one is from Hermanwadi Januar. The warm regard from your ex-students, Prof. Suratno. Happy able to study again with Mr. Suratno, the closest lecturer, or students can study even to only online. It's been a long time. You got message from Hermanwadi Januar. And the first questions from Fuad Jaya Miharja from Malang. As a teacher, we face many challenges during the applications of online learning. Sometimes we try to make many exceptions in emergency situations like this. For example, about idealism in teaching. How do you respond to these situations? And the second question is from Walu Yosuwito. As all we know that one of the outcome of learning and teaching is person to become competent in certain field of competence, and competency itself consists of 3 main components that are skills of knowledge and attitude. My question is, what is the strategy based on your experience to still deliver skills and attitude during Corona pandemic, since we cannot deliver that in face-to-face situation? And I address my questions to Madam Serena from Philippines. And third questions from Evi Christiana from Islamic University of Jember. How do we teach biology learning that requires practical activities to whom? The skill of student through online learning. Please, doctor, to answer these three questions. Please, Dr. Serrano, answer.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question, please?
Okay. First question. As a teacher, we face many challenges during the application of online learning. Sometimes we try to make many exceptions in emergency situation like this. For example, about idealism in teaching. How do you respond to this situation?
Sorry, you said we have many exceptions. Is that it?
We try to make many exceptions in emergencies situation like this. About idealism in
okay,
teaching.
thank you. Okay, thank you. So let me just go back to the basic assumption of emergency teaching, is that really this is an extraordinary time. So I think while we are in an emergency situation, we definitely should provide exemptions. So as I've said in my talk earlier, we should not just be concerned with the competencies that we are providing, but we should be concerned with the social and psychological well-being of our students. Which brings me back to my topic earlier, that you should know the context of your learner at this very moment that we are doing emergency remote teaching. So I think in one of the talks that I have attended, we should forgive all ourselves right now, because this is an extraordinary situation. So we should not be so much be burdened by thinking that the competencies that they are getting are enough. So we should balance all these things so that we are also addressing the other needs of our students. And then for the second and third question, these are very specific questions which I think would merit another webinar. But let me just run through some of the strategies that we do. So you first, of course, you have to go back to your learning outcomes. As I've said, when you're in the middle of the course and then you suddenly shift online, or probably if you will be doing this in the next semester, you should always go back to your learning outcomes. What are the learning outcomes for this specific course? And then you determine the type of content for each learning outcome. Will it be fact, concept, principle, procedure, attitude? And then there are many authors who provide, for example, Morrison and Ross. I forget the other authors, but I can share later some of the readings. And then you try to plan out what will be specific instructional strategies for each content type. For example, facts. For example, it's an association between two pieces of information. For example, in the field of history, for example, what is the association between Columbus and 1492? And then you will design specific instructional strategy that will address this specific content type. Will it be a practice strategy, a rehearsal, a mnemonic, so that they would recall these certain facts? And then if these are procedures, for example, specific psychomotor task, so this is basically skills, for example, calculating of some calculating mathematical equations, and then they should be able to practice. One of the strategies is practice the procedure through application, or if it's some biological procedure, they can probably paraphrase the procedure. So these are steps which should be included in the learning activities that each teacher would design. So let me go back to what I was saying earlier. This must include specific course design and planning. So this is not just something that you think overnight, but you have to design going back to the learning outcome of your course. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. How about the participants? Do you get the point about number 4, 5, and 6? Wait. Okay. Number 4 from Syarif Rizalia from Kendari, Southeast Wales. My question for Dr. Serrano. In my area, we must honest that none of us are ready for the transition from offline to online learning. One of the reasons is the unstable internet connection and the financial ability from the parents of students who are not all from the middle class. So if the COVID-19 pandemic is not over soon, what effective teaching and learning should provided by the teacher with that conditions? Thanks for the answer. And the fifth question from Yanuar Saputra. The question is, now in pandemic, every learning is doing at home, and we know home is place of rest. My school has a background in online learning with LCMS. When at school, all tasks always finish well. But when in pandemic and learn from home, some students not complete the task or complete the task late. How is the strategy so that students are able to complete their tasks? And the sixth question from Naila Faradisa. The assessment process is an important part of the learning process. Based on my experience, I find it difficult to determine the right assessment process for online learning. In your opinion, how is the appropriate assessment process used in the online learning process so that it can assess students' ability objectively? Thank you very much. Dr. Serrano, please answer the 4, 5, and 6 question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. So I would definitely imagine that it would really be difficult to shift to online learning. This is actually also the case right now here in the Philippines. So, which is why in my earlier talk, I've said that you have to assess where you are currently right now. What are the available resources that you have, so that you will not build from nothing, or you will build from what you already have. So for example, if you do not have internet connection, so you can probably try to find out if your students have access to text messaging. Then you can probably send them messages, and then you can probably design some sort of a modular learning type, printed materials which you can send to them. So this would depend on different situations. So I'm not saying that this is the best way, but it's always ideal to go back to where your learners are. What are the current contexts where your learners are experiencing right now? Because they would vary. Some would probably have a very unstable internet connection, but they can probably be able to access social media. That is the case here in the Philippines. Even those who have very poor internet connection, they're able to access the Facebook through free data. So there are various scenarios that can happen, but it's always important to go back to the current situation where the students are currently are. So you have to try to find out the current situation so that you can probably respond to those. So examples are free text, messaging through Facebook, for example, social media, providing some content through printed material, or probably save them in USB, so that you don't need probably internet connection. Okay, so the second one is so how they can complete the task. So this is definitely a challenge. So for us, for example, when we shift to working from home, so we're basically working at home 24 hours. There's just so many emails and so many tasks that need to be addressed. But it's important that you plan, so you provide specific activities and then timetable on when or how long a particular activity would finish. And then you would require them to submit them on specific deadlines. So you have to set deadlines. So for example, you would imagine this learning activity is due on, for example, Monday, and then you set specific time so that they would be motivated to complete it before that particular time. And then of course you have to design learning activities that would motivate them to participate and engage. So this should be interactive activity that promotes critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So we should not provide them with activities that would not motivate them to do or participate something. So on the assessment, there are various types of assessment. I think my colleague there in Gember provided a very comprehensive assessment discussion. You can probably do authentic assessment or sorry, what's the question, the sixth one about assessment?
How is the appropriate assessment process used in the online learning process so that it can assess students' ability objectively?
Okay, so assessment again, so I've said earlier the 4 types: learning outcomes, the learning activities, the content, and then the assessment should definitely be aligned. So when doing assessment, there are various types of assessment. So their authentic assessment. You can do probably ask them to submit essays, and then probably some self-reflections. At UPOU, we do online assessment, but it would depend on the subject. So it also depends on specific subject, because probably in biology, some of this would not work. Probably some would be multiple choice. So there are various tools that you can use. If you're using an LMS, there's even a quiz functionality there wherein you can create your own quiz and then students can take it. For probably summative assessment later, then you can design something that is more secured so that you will ensure that the right students will be the ones taking the assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We move to next session. Question number 7, 8, and 9. Question number 7, 8, and 9, I will paste to chat. Okay. Number 7 is from Maulana Khalid Rifani from Lambung Makurat University, South Borneo. The biggest problem of e-learning are: first, teachers must connect students to learning source, although not all materials can be connected as desired. Second one is economic factors from students' family. The third, landscape and existence of students that affect the existence of technology. My questions: how to overcome this problem, especially in archipelago countries in Indonesia? Best regards, thank you. And the 8 questions from Herma Nuadi Januar. There were a number of Islamic boarding schools when they were cancelled because of the COVID pandemic 19. How to deal with this? Because of government policies, stay at home. Sometimes even school children in the cottage, some do not have online learning facilities such as cell phones, computers, or Wi-Fi. And 9 from Abdurrahman. Let me ask to Ms. Serrano. In your presentation, you said that ERT does not always have to be online. And in conducting ERT, we must establish a system for communication. Can you give a real example of a communication system on ERT without being online? Thank you. Please answer these 3 questions.
Okay, so those questions are for me, right?
Excuse me?
So those questions are for me. Okay. So for the 7th question, definitely these are problems that we cannot overcome overnight, not even for a year or not even for the coming years, because internet connectivity is really a problem. So that's, I think, a global problem for many developing countries. So as I've mentioned in my talk earlier, you can use resources which are with strong offline functionality, so that when you give students access to them, they need not connect to the internet. But let me just highlight that these strategies should not be per teacher alone, but it should be institutional. So you should be coordinating with your university or school administrators, because this would require some planning. And in order to provide quality education, standardization is important so that students would be able to have that affordance of equity and inclusion. So like, for example, you're providing learning resources that are available offline. And then you would like, for example, a certain grade level you would like to give them. So all those students in that particular grade level should be able to have access to that learning resource, regardless if it's connected online or offline. So as a teacher, this should not be just the concern of a teacher, but this should be also the concern of the institution or the school itself. So I think it's important that you have careful planning on how to proceed if it's an emergency remote teaching or eventually an integration into online. So some examples that I provided in my talk is printed materials. So these are modular, wherein you develop materials that promotes independent type of study. Even students who are in their homes, they can interact with the printed material because there will be learning activities that are written there by the teachers, which would allow them to answer them even if they're at home. Then you can probably upload all the content in a USB and then provide them to the students. So they would not require internet connection. So probably in each community, they can find or coordinate with local community radios or TV for broadcast of specific topics. So those are just practical scenarios that I'm able to think of. But of course, this would require coordination, not from just a teacher level, but an institutional level. So in terms of tools that has significant impact, so it's okay, so the tool would also depend on the context of a subject. So I cannot recommend a specific tool because each of us has a different subject matter that we teach. So a tool for a mathematics course would be different from my course, which is a social science course. So again, let me go back to the learning outcome. Once you have identified the content, then you can probably do this in a matrix type. So you have a learning outcome, identify the content, identify the learning activities, and then you identify how or you'll be able to deploy these specific activities, and what are the specific tools and resources that would be appropriate for a specific activity. And then yeah, I've also answered about the emergency remote teaching, not using online tools. So again, let me just run through them. These are printed materials. Sorry. These are printed materials, print-based learning materials, School on the Air, which is broadcasted over the radio, TV broadcast in community cables, for example, uploaded content in USB, mobile learning, you can use text-based, or if you have data, you can use offline functionality of Facebook, for example. And then you can explore systems with very strong offline functionality. So there are a number of resources which I think the UNESCO is promoting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we move to third sessions. We got 4 questions. I will paste to chat. Okay. From Zaini, from Sekolah Tinggi Teknologi Pontang. Let me ask to Ms. Serrano and Prof. Suratno. We have utilized the available tools to carry out online learning. From experience, it seems that the use of one tool to convey learning has not had a significant impact. So it is necessary to combine various media such as audio, video tutorials, and others. Please give us the best view of how to choose a good tools, which one tools or many applications tools. And the 11 questions from Umi Farika from Biology Education Jember University. My question is, how do you use good online learning tools to support different ways of learning for children, especially for kinesthetic children? Because I find it difficult to accept learning and still have to look for materials that is explained by myself. Thank you. And the 12 questions from Nurul Dwi Novik Karumsari from Jember University. I would ask about the alternative of learning solution, as you mentioned, is TV broadcast. How's the application in your country? Is there TV channel in your country especially that provide learning for students? For students currently, is it private channel or government channels or university channels? Thank you very much. Warm regard from Indonesia. And the last one is Nurma Yulita from Kendari. Let me ask to Prof. Suratno. As a lecturer, our job is not only teaching, but also being staff or of research and research for students. Since the pandemic starts, we have meetings nearly every day during lecturing hours. What is the most appropriate way to manage time between teaching students online and attending staff meeting, as well as giving students understanding that lecturers should make up class regularly? For these answer sessions, please Mr. Suratno to answer first.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Adit. I want to answer, summary answer, but a lot of question. The first one, I think the weakness online learning sometimes on idealism of lecture or teacher on the online learning. Idealism teacher or lecture on online learning, that is reduced in this case. But as we know, the pandemic make the other problem, for example, economic. So let us have contribute on the online learning process. For example, connection, internet connection, it is important to support the online learning. If internet connection itself not good, it's a make a problem. Yeah, that is the key of the online learning is internet connection. But the other side, we can manage on the learning management system, LMS, on offline and online management. So in this case, learning management system, in the part 2 in my presentation, the student and the lecturer or the teacher should be manage learning management system on offline and online. In the introduction, usually the step by step, the student should be read. What about the step by step the procedure? And the second, sometimes have a tool about download worksheet, for example. If we have good connection, worksheet can finish directly online. But if have not supported connection, a good connection, the student can finish the job by offline. And if the connection good, for example, the student can upload this work. So in this case, for my experience or opinion, how to manage learning management system is important. Not only all of the material online, but the part of the material can download, the student work offline. If the student finish the job and then can be upload if the connection is good. So according me, it is important how to manage learning management system, how to arrange step by step on the lesson. What about the affective, for example, or psychomotoric? Yeah, that is difficult to improve the student how to manage on the psychomotoric or affective domain. But the problem is the student work from home and the teacher cannot full control the student activity. I think in the psychomotoric, maybe use technology how to observe something. For example, in biology, identification species, for example, the tool can be used or choose in the internet tool how to identify species in the tool in the internet. And that is can improve student on psychomotoric. The student work self at home. So the teacher gave assignment or worksheet about psychomotoric. What about the affective? The affective, it is problem if we give assignment, assessment, but we cannot fully control the student finish the assignment. In Indonesia or in our city, in Jember, sometimes the teacher say, sorry, Mrs. Serrano, Prof. Buat, in our term Indonesia language hanya malaikat yang tahu. But the teacher or lecturer cannot fully control the student finish the job. I have experience on the workshop online. The other one finished the job, but the other one active workshop. That is problem. If they finish the job, that is the other one work. It is very difficult to control. There is a weakness online learning. Fully controlling the job or work. So maybe have many experience or tool give more control student work. That is the related with affective. That is very difficult to control this student work. And then what about the refer online learning? As we know that Indonesia student, a competent Indonesia student should be success on cognitive, affective, and psychomotoric. But the three domain is make our it is weakness self. How to solve the problem. But it's very difficult to improve psychomotoric and affective controlling. But the other side, cognitive domain it is more easy than the psychomotoric and affective domain.
How about the second questions? Second question is, as a lecturer, our job is not only teaching,
Okay.
but also being staff
Yeah,
of
yeah,
research and
staff,
community service.
Okay. So actually, if we have management of learning management system, actually no problem, Ibu. If we have a class and the same time we have activity, the other activity. But in this case, in the management learning system, the student can work by self, by worksheet on the LMS. If the teacher or lecturer have not good management LMS, needs to make a problem. For example, from the start and the finish, we use web meeting. So it is difficult to manage if we have the other activity. The other side, this is very, very expensive. This is very expensive. If we will start web meeting until the finish meeting, we use online. But if we arrange on the learning management system, if the connection good, we use, for example, direct submitting. But if the connection is not good, the student can work self by offline. So the key of this problem should be make good learning management system. How to make learning management system effective should be construct on offline work and online work. But this is not use, for example, web meeting, but just online. So it is a difference between online and web meeting. Web meeting, the teacher or lecturer can control the student activity. But the other side, if we use a long time web meeting, it is very expensive. Okay, yes, Pak Adit.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Suratno. And please, Dr. Serrano, to answer these 4 questions.
Okay, so maybe you can just answer the questions in general, because I think those are related as well, except probably for the question on the specific channel on TV. So let me put it in this context. Everything should be planned out, including the type of tools and technology that will be used and the learning activity that will be used. So as you plan for your next school year, you can probably imagine it in a matrix. So we call it here in UPOUS a horizontal plan. So you, in one column, you have to put your learning outcomes there. You have to put in the first column, you should put there your the main topics that will be included in your particular course. So this topic should be chunked depending on the learning outcomes for your specific course. And then for each topic, you would indicate specific learning outcomes. And then what are the subtopics for each course, for each main topic. And then you will include there the resources that will be used. So for example, there's a question there, Should I use audio, video, and others? So definitely, you would use all these types of media. So it would depend on the resource. When I talk of resource here, it's the academic material that will be used for that specific topic. So for example, in biology, a specific topic, you are able to get a good video. So that's one of the resources that you will use. Then another topic, you're able to find a good podcast. Then that's another topic that you can use. And then as you were searching, you were not able to find anything. Then that's the time that you can conduct your own video lecture. You can do a screencast. You can record yourself, and then you can upload it as a video lecture, which will be used as the learning resource for that specific topic. So as I've said, in online learning, it's multimediality. But again, it should involve careful planning. So another column would include tools and technology, for example. So for example, for the specific content or topic, you were able to find a good app. So you can probably include it as a tool. So the bottom line here is that you plan out everything. It should not be something that is we call it in Philippines pachi-pachi. So it's like bits and pieces. It should be an entire planning of the content. So before you start the course in the coming school year or the semester, everything should be planned out. This is the difference between face-to-face and online learning. In face-to-face, since you're able to meet your students every day, you can prepare your lesson the night before. But in online learning, it should be planned out. In UPOU, we prepare our courses a semester ahead. So when we open our course site in our learning management system, everything is already there. That's how important planning is in an online learning scenario. So when you plan out, you'll be able to identify the specific tool, the specific media, the specific resource that you will use for each specific content, be it cognitive, affective, or psychomotor. What is important is that you plan ahead so that everything is aligned from the course, from the learning outcome to the learning activities to the learning resources up to the assessment portion. And then on the question on specific TV channel, in the Philippines we have here a knowledge channel, but as I mentioned earlier, it can actually be an institutional arrangement. So for example, you can probably coordinate with your community cable, wherein you can get an hour or so, wherein a teacher could probably lecture on a specific content, and you would ask your students to tune in on this particular time. So when I say that you can use TV and radio, this would include some coordination on an institutional level. Yeah, so I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, finally we come to the end of our presentations. Before I close this seminar, I would like to take the conclusion from what we discussed about. So many challenges that we must tackle to make e-learning education in this emergency COVID-19 era. We must analyze the current situations by checking the infrastructure, software, content, capacity, access, support, and process. As educator, we must learn new things about online learning, such as course design and development, teaching and learning, student support and organization and management. We must have 4 design principles, such as design for learning outcomes, design for learners, design with digital resource and technologies, and the last is design for interaction with others. So, we as educators must ensure the continuity of learning for our student education development. In this emergency era, the parent has a big portion to motivate the student to learn. We as an educator must avoid giving a huge task to student without any discussion or reflections. And please avoid giving tasks that acquire student transfer from textbooks to assignment sheet. Online learning is more effective if there are modules, video, HOTS questions, and other learning resources that are structured in learning media system. And we have one more additions from Prof. Suratno. Please, you have 1 minute to add some conclusion remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Adit. A good day, Prof. Buat. Prof. Buat still joining this seminar. Thank you very much, Prof. Okay. In this case, it is difficult to answer if we have a question. What about the choosing the good tool web meeting? But each web meeting have advantage and disadvantage. So the good choice is shortly web meeting but effective. Thank you very much, Pak Adit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we would like to say thanks again to presenter for the informative and interesting talk, and to audience for active participations. I hope you enjoyed the program, and I look forward to your participation in future seminars. Stay safe everyone, and let's fight COVID-19. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Wala naman dia. Si Vice Dean.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Kofifa dari Parawasta, Jawa Timur.
Congratulations.
Great job.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.